Okay, so let's get into this. Volodymyr Zelensky. I mean, it's quite a story, isn't it? From uh, a huge comedy star to president, and then suddenly a wartime leader, a global figure. That's almost unbelievable.
It really is. And what strikes me is how his journey reflects these, broader shifts in society, how someone so outside the political norm could rise so high, especially in a country facing such immense challenges.
Exactly, and that's what we're diving into today. We really want to unpack this whole trajectory. How does an entertainer become this symbol on the world stage, leading a country through war? Our main source for this is a narrative called Volodymyr Zelensky from Famous People English Stories. It gives a pretty solid overview.
Yeah, it provides that chronological backbone, which is helpful. It lets us trace things back, see how maybe those early experiences in entertainment shaped his leadership later on. It's quite fascinating when you look at it that way.
So let's start at the beginning. He was born back in 1978, Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine. Soviet Union back then, of course. Pretty normal family, sounds like father, professor, mother, an engineer. Hardworking people.
Right. And interestingly, they spoke Russian at home, but he learned Ukrainian in school. That kind of bilingual, bicultural background, well, it takes on a different light later, doesn't it?
It really does. And even as a kid, the narrative says he was, bright, energetic, loved reading, movies, and crucially had this knack for making people laugh.
And that ability, it's not just about jokes, is it? It hints at an early understanding of people, how to connect, how to read a room, essentially. Yeah. That's a skill, whether you're on stage or in politics.
Absolutely. So chapter 1 in our source takes us from that comedy background towards the presidency. As a teenager, he gets involved in this big comedy competition, KVN. It was huge across the former Soviet countries.
Like a major league for comedy, almost.
Yeah.
High pressure, televised.
Totally. And he wasn't just in it, he excelled, won national prizes with his team. But back then, his dream was acting, Politics wasn't even on the radar.
That KVN experience, though, thinking about it, it's teamwork, writing, performing under pressure, dealing with audiences. Those aren't bad skills to have later on, even if you don't realize it at the time. Maybe builds resilience.
Good point. Fast forward a bit, he forms his own comedy troupe, Kvartal 95. Very successful shows, movies, TV series, the works. But there's one TV show that really stands out, doesn't it? Servant of the People. Started in 2015.
Ah, yes, Servant of the People. This is where things get really, really interesting. It's this perfect storm of entertainment meeting political frustration.
Right. He plays this ordinary school teacher, Vasily Goloborodko, who just goes off on this epic rant about corruption. Someone films it, it goes viral, and boom, he becomes president.
And the show wasn't just fluff. It tackled real issues, didn't it? Corruption, poverty, weak leadership. Things people were genuinely angry about.
Exactly. It hit a nerve. People loved this character. Yeah. Honest, brave, actually trying to do the right thing. He was everything people felt their real politicians weren't.
It created this powerful what-if scenario. This fictional president resonated so strongly because he embodied the desire for change. He wasn't just a character, he was an aspiration.
And then the lines blur completely. This fictional president, this idea, it starts to feel possible. People start asking, could Zelensky do this? Even though he had zero political experience. And then in 2018, he actually announces he's running for president. For real.
Which must have seemed well, crazy to many people. The narrative mentions the skepticism, right? How can an actor, a comedian, possibly run a country? Understandable doubts.
Absolutely. Lots of people dismissed him, thought it was a joke or just impossible. But then there was this other side, this huge wave of support. People were just so tired of the same old politics, the corruption.
They were desperate for something new, someone untainted. And Zelensky, or at least his public persona from the show, offered exactly that. He represented a break from the past.
His campaign was smart too. Really simple messages: fight corruption, bring peace to the East, listen to the people, stuff everyone could get behind.
And crucially, how he delivered those messages. He leaned heavily on social media, didn't he? Direct videos, very simple, very personal.
Yeah, he kind of bypassed the traditional media gatekeepers. It felt authentic, direct. It really connected, especially with younger voters. It felt modern.
And the result, well, it was a political earthquake. April 2019, not just a win, a landslide. Over 70% of the vote.
Incredible. Just goes to show how deep that desire for change really was. A massive rejection of the old political class.
But then, of course, came the huge question, the one hanging over everything. Okay, he entertained us, he inspired us.
Yeah.
But can he actually lead? Can he unite the country and handle the immense challenges Ukraine was facing?
Exactly. That transition from performer to president, that was the big unknown. Which brings us nicely into Chapter 2, Leading in Peace, Preparing for War. There was definitely curiosity when he took office.
And high expectations, too, given that mandate. He set out with ambitious goals, tackling corruption head-on, improving life for ordinary Ukrainians, and, critically, finding peace in eastern Ukraine.
That conflict in the East was a huge priority, wasn't it? It had been grinding on for years.
Absolute central. He'd promised to pursue peace. And there were some early moves, like that meeting in Paris in 2019 with Putin, Macron, Merkel.
Right, the Normandy format talks. And they agreed on a prisoner exchange, which did offer a little bit of hope at the time, didn't it?
A glimmer, perhaps. But the narrative points out the harsh realities quickly set in. The fighting in the East never really stopped. His reforms faced pushback from inside the system, from those old vested interests.
And corruption, I mean, that's a deep, deep problem. Not something you solve overnight, no matter how much you want to.
Definitely not. But despite these challenges, he did manage to keep that connection with the public, using those same direct communication methods. Videos, social media, it kept his popularity relatively high.
He maintained that sense of being accessible, of speaking directly to people, which was quite different from previous leaders, perhaps.
It was a defining feature, yeah. Then early 2020 hits, and suddenly it's a whole new crisis, COVID-19.
Right, and Ukraine, like a lot of places, wasn't really ready. Weak hospitals, not enough equipment, and the economy took a hit too.
It was a massive test for any leader. Suddenly, you're dealing with lockdowns, public health strategy, economic fallout, completely different challenges.
The narrative says he responded by ordering lockdowns, trying to project calm, urging unity, trying to navigate that storm.
The difficult time for everyone. But even as Ukraine was dealing with the pandemic, something else, something much more threatening was developing on the borders.
Yeah, starting in 2021, Russia begins this huge military buildup. Troops, tanks, planes, weapons, tens of thousands, then over 100,000.
A massive escalation. It created this intense uncertainty and fear. What did it mean? Was it just pressure or something more?
Zelensky was trying to navigate this, right? Seeking help from the West, talking to NATO, the EU, while also saying, Ukraine will defend itself.
A very precarious position. Trying to rally international support without provoking an immediate crisis, while also preparing for the worst.
And internally, people had different views, didn't they? Was an invasion really going to happen? Some thought it was just posturing by Russia.
There was definitely debate and uncertainty, but the narrative suggests that behind the scenes, Zelensky and the military were preparing, making plans, asking partners for weapons, getting ready.
But he had this tough balancing act with public communication. How much do you warn people? Do you risk causing panic?
It's an impossible choice, really. He seems to have opted for urging calm publicly, telling people not to panic, while intensifying those military preparations privately, assuring people Ukraine was ready.
Trying to avoid mass chaos, maybe? Maintain some stability?
potentially, weighing the risks. But then, February 24th, 2022, the preparations weren't just theoretical anymore.
The invasion begins, explosions across the country. Airports, military bases hit, civilian areas too. Just shock everywhere.
Global shock. And frankly, many analysts expected Ukraine to fall quickly. The military imbalance seemed overwhelming. There was widespread expectation that Zelensky himself would flee Kyiv.
But he didn't. That's the moment, isn't it? He stays, he posts that video, handheld, grainy, outside the presidential office in Kyiv with his team. I am here. We're all here. We're in Kyiv. We're defending Ukraine.
That single act, it was incredibly powerful. It instantly changed the narrative. It galvanized Ukrainians. It caught the world's attention in a completely new way.
He went from president to symbol of courage, resistance, hope, overnight almost.
Absolutely. It was a defining moment, not just for him, but for the conflict itself. And that leads us into chapter 3, looking at him as this wartime leader on the world stage. His decision to stay was huge.
It really set the tone, and from then on, it's just relentless wartime leadership. Meetings with the military, making these life or death decisions, showing up on Kyiv's streets with soldiers.
And constant communication. Not just internally, but with the world. Those speeches became legendary.
Yeah, delivered from anywhere, it seemed. Dark rooms, basements, sometimes near wreckage. But the message was always so clear, so direct.
Ukraine is fighting for survival. We need your help. Not soldiers necessarily, but weapons, money, support.
He started addressing parliaments everywhere, right? The U.S. Congress, the U.K. Parliament, the Bundestag in Germany, Japan, tailoring the message each time.
Very skillfully, too. Using those historical references, 9/11, Pearl Harbor, Churchill, the Berlin Wall, to connect Ukraine's fight to moments those countries understood. It was incredibly effective emotionally.
You saw the standing ovations, the commitments for more aid. It clearly worked.
And the global response was massive. Weapons started flowing in, humanitarian aid, money. The EU opened its borders to refugees. The U.S. sent advanced systems. You saw Ukrainian flags everywhere.
It was a huge outpouring of support. But inside Ukraine, I mean, the situation was just horrific. Cities destroyed, families split, millions forced to flee.
Unimaginable devastation. And yet, Zelensky kept leading, visiting hospitals, meeting soldiers, thanking volunteers, trying to keep hope alive amidst all that loss.
There's that quote the narrative includes, "From a night of missile attacks, we will not break. We are fighting for our freedom, for our future, for our children." That really sums up the spirit he projected.
It does. And again, you see how his background in media, in performance, actually helped him. He knew how to connect, how to use language powerfully, how to build that emotional bridge.
But it wasn't just about inspiration, was it? The war was brutal. Attacks on civilians, schools, hospitals. Horrific reports started coming out about potential war crimes.
Terrible reports, mass graves, torture, killings. The evidence mounted.
And Zelensky made sure the world saw it, inviting journalists, sharing the images, making sure the human cost wasn't hidden.
Exposing the reality of the invasion became a key part of his strategy, alongside the military defense. And speaking of the military, they put up incredible resistance, didn't they?
They really did.
Yeah.
Pushing the Russians back from Kyiv, launching counteroffensives later on, helped by that international aid. It defied all the early predictions.
Absolutely. And personally, for Zelensky, the narrative touches on this. Living in bunkers, constant security threats, a completely different life, yet he kept working relentlessly.
He got loads of awards, Time Person of the Year, all that. But he seemed to always pivot back to Ukraine, right? Using the attention for his country.
Yeah, his focus seemed consistently on securing peace and support for Ukraine, not on personal accolades.
And throughout 2023, it was more the same, wasn't it? Traveling the world, meeting leaders, speaking everywhere, building alliances, just constantly being the voice of Ukraine.
And emphasizing that collective effort. Remember that quote, "I am not fighting alone. All of Ukraine is fighting, and we will not stop until we win." That sense of unity was crucial.
So, by this point, as Chapter 4 discusses, he's become this global symbol. Courage, resistance, freedom. His face is everywhere. It's quite a transformation.
It truly is. And you think about the burden, leading a nation at war with no previous military background. It's immense.
The narrative says he really dove into understanding the military side, though. Listening to generals, studying maps, asking questions. He didn't just delegate, he engaged.
Which suggests a real commitment to understanding the nuts and bolts, not just the big picture. And his visibility remained key. Visiting those bombed towns, hospitals, meeting people, he wasn't hiding.
That's a powerful contrast, isn't it? Some leaders disappear in crises. He stepped right into the spotlight, literally putting himself out there, leading by example.
And the symbolism he used, it was so effective. The simple army green clothes, the beard growing out, that serious but determined look. It communicated wartime leader instantly, without needing words.
It became iconic, like a uniform almost.
Exactly. And those interviews he gave, often very raw, very emotional. His definition of courage, doing what is right even when you're afraid, that resonated deeply.
It became a kind of motto for Ukraine's fight, didn't it?
It did. And it helped rally that international support further. But he was always clear, wasn't he? Ukraine fights its own war. We just need the tools. No foreign troops requested.
Right. Give us the ammunition, basically. And while fighting the war, he was also trying to keep the country running. Schools open online or underground fixing infrastructure, supporting local government.
That dual focus is remarkable. Managing the immediate crisis while also thinking about keeping the fabric of society intact, that takes incredible effort.
And he never stopped talking about peace, did he? He presented that peace plan internationally.
Yes, outlining clear conditions. Justice for war crimes, return of all occupied land, respect for borders, a framework for ending the war, but on Ukraine's terms.
And he was adamant about territory, wasn't he? No compromise on Ukraine's sovereignty, and that peace without justice is not real peace.
A principled stance.
Yeah.
And importantly, even with the war raging, he seemed committed to keeping Ukraine democratic. No slide into authoritarianism, which can happen in wartime.
Delaying elections only because it was unsafe, keeping the press relatively free, allowing opposition voices. That's a hard balance to strike.
Extremely hard. That combination of strength and maintaining freedom became a defining part of his leadership image.
He sort of reminded everyone what freedom really means, didn't he? Not just talk, but the right to live without being invaded, to choose your own path.
Exactly. And through it all, apparently, he kept that sense of humor, that human touch, finding ways to connect even in the darkest times.
So by 2024, the war's still going on, the losses are immense, but that spirit, as the narrative says, remains unbroken. Zelensky's words capture it. We may be tired, but we are not weak. We may suffer, but we are not defeated.
He had become more than a leader by then. He really was this embodiment, this global symbol of defiance and the fight for freedom.
Which brings us to the final chapter, Chapter 5, Legacy and Lessons. Obviously, the story isn't over. The war continues. The future's uncertain.
The narrative makes that clear. It's an ongoing story. But it also argues his legacy is already significant, regardless of the final outcome.
Think back to the beginning, the skepticism about a comedian becoming president. Compare that to the global respect he commands now. It's night and day.
It really forces us to rethink what constitutes leadership material. His journey shows that it can come from unexpected places especially when circumstances demand it.
And the legacy isn't just about the war, is it? It's about character, about responsibility, listening, finding strength when everything seems lost. He's shown a kind of resilience that's inspired people far beyond Ukraine.
He became a symbol of hope in a very dark period globally. A reminder that even against overwhelming odds, resistance is possible, that values matter.
The narrative touches on what might come next: peace talks, maybe EU membership someday, the massive task of rebuilding, maybe eventually he goes back to private life. Who knows? But history will remember him.
Absolutely. It'll remember him staying in Kiev. It'll remember, I need ammunition, not a ride. It'll remember him standing up for freedom.
And the lessons from his story seem pretty universal, don't they? That ordinary people can rise to extraordinary challenges.
Definitely. And the sheer power of words to inspire, to unite, to move people to action. His communication has been central.
And that idea of courage, not being fearless, but acting despite the fear, that's relatable for anyone.
And fundamentally, that leadership, at its best, is about service, serving the people you lead, putting their needs first.
And this connects to you listening to this. If you're learning English, wow, what an example of using language for purpose, to connect globally. But for anyone, really, his story makes you think, doesn't it? About your own capacity for bravery, for doing what's right, even when it's hard.
It's a powerful, modern example of how one person's choices, driven by conviction, can genuinely influence world events. It challenges cynicism, perhaps.
So, yeah, comedian, president, wartime leader, global symbol, Volodymyr Zelensky. It's been an absolutely extraordinary transformation, a story for our times, really. A story about Ukraine, but also about the enduring fight for freedom everywhere.
It highlights the unpredictable twists of history and the remarkable potential that can be unlocked when individuals are thrust into moments of profound crisis.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Volodymyr Zelensky's incredible story. It really drives home how extraordinary potential can emerge from seemingly ordinary circumstances when history takes an unexpected turn.
His journey provides a compelling case study in resilience, adaptability, and the profound impact of leadership grounded in courage and clear communication.
And maybe a final thought for you to ponder. How does Zelensky's path, moving from entertainment to global wartime leadership, change how we think about what makes an effective leader today? Is it just political skill, or is it also about communication, resilience, that ability to inspire on a global scale?
And perhaps consider which aspects of his character, his communication style, his resilience, his symbolism, his defensive democratic values under pressure resonate most strongly with the challenges we see in the world, or even in your own life.
It really makes you think about the power of individual choice, doesn't it? How one person's actions can ripple outwards and shape history. Something to reflect on. We'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, keep exploring.